And if you've been paying any attention at all, Ken Buck has come under some fire from right-wing circles, especially conservative outlets like Breitbart and others have just really been attacking him over a bipartisan bill that he is spearheading, that he is one of the sponsors of, the Journalism Competition and Presentation Act. And, you hear the title of that bill. That sounds pretty good. And then you go to a news source like Breitbart and they say, Ken's in the tank and this is going to hurt news outlets and all kinds of stuff. I thought, man, I got to get some truth on this thing. So stumbled across, and so glad that we did, Mike Davis. He's the president and founder of the Internet Accountability Project. And Mike joins us now from, I think, Washington, D.C. Is that where we got you, Mike?
You got it. Thank you for having me on.
Better believe it. Tell folks a little bit about IAP, the Internet Accountability Project.
Sure. We started the Internet Accountability Project to take on big tech, Google, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Twitter from the right. Big tech has just gotten too big and too powerful, so we started this group to bring accountability to big tech. And Congressman Ken Buck from Colorado, I split my time between D.C. and Colorado. Congressman Ken Buck has been the tip of the spear against big tech. He has been a true conservative leader in the big tech fight, and he has been instrumental in taking on big tech with his new perch as the head of the antitrust subcommittee in the House. He's the Republican leader of that, and he has really done a good job. He's bringing several bills. This Journalism Competition and Preservation Act is one first step, and he's going to bring several bills on antitrust to rein in big tech and their abuses.
Mike,
so we're very happy at IAP to support Ken Buck. What's
your connection to Colorado?
My connection to Colorado is that I lived there for 10 years in Denver. I clerked for then Judge Gorsuch on the 10th Circuit, and then lived in Denver for 10 years and was a civil litigator. And when I helped then Judge Gorsuch become Justice Gorsuch, and then I followed him back out to D.C. to help him get set up on the Supreme Court. And then my home state Senator Chuck Grassley from Iowa asked me to go serve as the chief counsel for nominations on the Senate Judiciary Committee, where I helped then Chairman Grassley confirmed a record number of President Trump's judicial nominees, and I have been out here since. Unfortunately, I've been mired in the swamp since, but I do split my time between Denver and D.C.
Well, I'll tell you, it must have been an interesting few months during the confirmation of Justice Gorsuch and getting that sense that the United States Supreme Court was actually going to be heading in another direction. And it's way too soon to evaluate these nominees. I was disappointed in how the Supreme Court stayed completely out of any of the election investigations that were going on. But we still have a wonderful foundation on this Supreme Court for massively important bills as we move forward. So you must be awfully proud to have seen us, head that direction.
Yeah, President Trump truly transformed the federal judiciary. We went from a 5-4 John Roberts court to a 5-4 Clarence Thomas court.
Yeah.
Congressman Ken Buck is good friends with Justice Gorsuch. They've been longtime friends, and Congressman Buck was a tremendous supporter of Justice Gorsuch through his confirmation process, so we're very appreciative for that.
I've taken on as a client Professor Dr. John Eastman, who was a clerk for Justice Clarence Thomas. And it's fascinating, and the little stories and snippets that come out in those, private dinner conversations and the asides and conversations for another day, because I know we've got to talk about this. So obviously you're a big fan of Ken Buck. Ken has been a longtime friend of mine back to when he was a prosecutor in Weld County, and we actually had criminal cases against him, and I thought the office was run with high integrity and great ethics at that time. And I've never come across an action, even the ones I've disagreed with, from Ken Buck that wasn't grounded in some principle. You sound like a fan, so help me understand why. I guess let's start with the JCPA, Journalism Competition and Preservation Act. Why is that a bad thing for the big five, Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and Twitter, and a good thing for everybody else?
Well, what it does is it allows the news publishers to collectively bargain with big tech. So right now, Google, Facebook, the big tech platforms take news stories from these news outlets and publish them, and then they make the ad revenue off of these news stories. So they're just taking other people's work and content and then making the money off of it. So what this Journalism Competition and Preservation Act does, see, here's the problem. These are trillion-dollar big tech monopolists. They are huge. They are powerful. Even the federal government can't rein them in. And so how would a one-off news organization in, like, the Greeley Tribune be able to negotiate with Google or Facebook? It can't. And so what you have to be able to do is let these news organizations band together to collectively bargain with big tech, with Google, with Facebook, with the rest of them. And so what it does is it creates a safe harbor provision in the antitrust laws to let these news organizations band together to collectively bargain so they can get more advertising revenue to the news organization that actually created the content versus these trillion-dollar big tech monopolists who are just essentially stealing advertising dollars. And so it's a short-term provision. It's a first step. It's a short-term fix, while Congressman Ken Buck teams up with other conservatives and even some right-thinking Democrats to fix the longer-term problem, which is that we need to fix our antitrust laws and we need to enforce our antitrust laws.
I haven't read the bill, and I'm just beginning to try and wrap my hands around sort of the consequences and how this would play out. But from what you've described, it sounds like the implementation of something like this would be a benefit even to, I don't know, a news outlet like 710 KNUS or small newspapers, and newspapers going out of business like crazy, and they cannot get the deals to get their advertising onto these big five platforms. Instead, the big five platforms can collude together, decide what they want, what agendas they want to promote, make sweetheart deals to the folks that promote those agendas, and basically screw over everybody else. Is that a simplistic but accurate analysis of that situation?
Yeah, I mean, think about this. If we lose all of these news organizations across the country, where are we going to get our information? Our information is going to be completely controlled by big media, liberal media, and liberal big tech. We're not going to be able to get our news from any other source because they're going to go out of business because they don't have the advertising revenue. So this is important. I think when I read that Breitbart piece, I was kind of, first of all, I was stunned that they would write something so bad, and then I had to step back and think about why they would do that. I was thinking maybe the reason is that they have a deal. They're getting a lot of advertising revenue from we have Facebook and Google paying them a lot of money for their advertising. And if you go look at the bill, what was amazing to me is that the people who are opposing this bill says that big tech would benefit from this bill, and it's just gaslighting at its worst. If you go and look at this legislation, Google and Facebook are registered to lobby against Ken Buck's bill. So if Google and Facebook are paying lobbyists to oppose JCPA, how the heck do they benefit from JCPA, and why are they lobbying against their own interest?
Well, and one of the attacks on Ken that they threw out is that he's now in the pocket of lobbyists, and they cited this $18,000 number. And so I didn't do this homework myself. I'm relying on somebody else's numbers, but it looks like $18,000 was donated to Ken Buck from, some different lobbying groups for people who would likely support the JCPA over the last 6 years. So these guys donate, these lobbyists, they donate to both sides of the aisle. They put small amounts of money everywhere so they've got access to get in. $18,000 from a bunch of lobbyists over the course of 6 years is nothing. And I'm thinking, if that's all they got, then what the heck? But on the flip side, why do we have people like McCarthy, who I'm no huge fan of, but others like Jim Jordan, who I am, so adamantly opposed to this JCPA?
Yeah, so Jim Jordan is interesting because he says I read his tweets, I listen to his clips, I watch him on the news, and he sounds great. He has been, for messaging, he's an A+. The problem is that he takes all this big tech money. Congressman Ken Buck does not take big tech money anymore. He specifically disavows it, and he's told big tech he's not taking any more of their money because he doesn't want to deal with them because they don't operate in good faith. The problem with Jim Jordan is he talks a good game, but he's actually the person behind the scenes who has been fighting against these proposals by Congressman Ken Buck on antitrust. So, Jim Jordan, from an antitrust perspective, is the problem.
That's just fascinating. So self-interests are, I guess, big surprise. Self-interests fueling some of the positions that these politicians are taking. Ken Buck he's always pretty quiet. He doesn't really come out and defend himself a whole lot. He just seems to keep his head down. But I'll go back to what I said. I forget if it was when I was bringing you on or during the opening of the show. I haven't seen Ken do things that aren't based on principle, even things that I disagree with. And so I was just astonished when I saw and read about all these people coming out making these ridiculous allegations that he's in the pocket of big media lobbyists, and then trashed this bill, which seems like it would be something that conservatives would be uniting behind.
Well, let me tell you some news organizations, some conservative news organizations that endorse this bill. You have Newsmax, Washington Times, Daily Caller, Washington Examiner. Not exactly big media, not exactly left-wing rags. These are conservative news organizations that are supporting this bill. You have Republican members of Congress who have come out and supported this bill. Congressman John Carter from Texas, Senator Bill Cassidy from Louisiana, Congressman Doug Collins from Georgia, James Comer from Kentucky, even Senator Rand Paul and Senator Mitch McConnell from Kentucky. This is not some liberal legislation like the Facebook and Google lobbyists are trying to gaslight people into believing. And what's amazing is what this bill does is it creates a short, small exception to the antitrust laws so these small news organizations can take on trillion-dollar big tech monopolists. And then you have these trillion-dollar big tech monopolists using their proxies, using their puppets to pretend like they're being pure on antitrust. They're not. Fascinating.
Well, Mike Davis from the Internet Accountability Project, I would really love to give out your website, the way people can get more information about this. I'm just beginning to learn about it, but when I heard all of the headlines, big Ken Buck in the pocket of media lobbyists and stuff like that, I knew there had to be another side to that story, and I want to learn more. What can people do? Where can they go?
Yeah, it's theiap.org, THEIAP.org, and I encourage people to go to Congressman Ken Buck's website. He has been, again, a true champion, true conservative champion for everyday Americans, everyone in Colorado, to take on big tech's abuses.
Well, and of course, his standing up for what is apparently his friend Liz Cheney didn't help him very much in creating the openings for people to take these roundhouse shots at him. But
yeah, that's Congressman Buck works for Dick Cheney, so this is a personal loyalty issue for him, and he's one of the most principled conservative members of Congress.
It is the nature of the business, and I'm sorry to see it. Glad to get at least a beginning understanding about what's really going on with this Journalism Competition and Preservation Act. Mike, I'll probably be calling you or reading you some more and maybe getting you back on as this continues to progress. Really appreciate your time this morning. Have a great weekend, sir.
Thank you for having me.